Hello, everyone. This is Kristen Kayla, Health Promotion Consultant with HealthNet. I'll be the host of the webinar today. All participants have been muted upon entering the webinar just to avoid any background noise and any kind of distractions or interruptions. And if you wish to change your audio setting, go ahead and just click on the Join Audio icon shown on the picture with the arrow on your screen right there. And a pop-up box will appear with different audio options. And then you can just select your preferred audio option and check the box to set your default selection. Next slide, please. All right, and if you feel free to chat me throughout this presentation. You'll see the chat icon on either the bottom ribbon of your screen or else on the top ribbon of your screen. So there's a picture of the chat function right there. So feel free to chat me. And I do receive them in real time, and I'll respond as quickly as I can to your chat. Next slide, please. And we always like to start our presentations off with this disclaimer, which I'll read out loud. The information provided in this presentation is intended solely for the general information of the audience. It is not medical advice and shall not replace consultation with your physician or other qualified health provider. If you have any health-related questions or problems, please seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider. Next slide, please. All right, and today's topic is adjusting to the new normal, resilience, endurance, and whole person self-care. And Ellison King, licensed clinical social worker here at HealthNet, is here with me today to present this wonderful topic. Ellison, thank you so much for your time today. Go ahead and start your presentation. Thank you.
And take it away. Yeah, thanks, Kristen. And hi, everyone. As she said, my name is Ellison King. I'm an LCSW, and I'm a clinical program manager at Managed Health Network, MHN, which is the behavioral health provider for HealthNet members. Thank you for joining me today to talk about something that I am personally and professionally very passionate about, which is whole person self-care. Just a little background, I created this webinar in 2020, but just like COVID, it's morphed over time and actually in some ways seems to be more and more relevant and accessible to people as time goes on, because the pandemic has really highlighted a lot of the concepts and practices which we'll be discussing today, which a lot of people weren't privy to or hadn't been super exposed to in the past. I'm gonna just jump right in. So in one way or another, I feel like we've all been on a learning journey, right, since 2020, personally, societally, because really we've had no choice, right? There's been no other option but to be on some sort of a learning trajectory. We've all had to learn how to be selfless and the importance of caring for the greater good. We've had to become really flexible because perpetual change has really become the norm for all of us. And one thing I keep hearing lately, so much so that it started to become a bit cliche, kind of like the term new normal has started to become, the new normal has become a little bit cliche. Something else I've been hearing lately is it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's very true, right? And it's such an important kind of mantra to learn for ourselves. But how can we help ourselves from going from not okay to bad or worse, to really not good? The way we do this is by building strengths and endurance, which are protective layers to our health and well-being, and can help keep us from going over the edge. So the question is, how do we do that? How do we build that? By developing resilience. So first, I want to acknowledge that this word too, like a lot of things over time, the last couple of years, and maybe even the concept itself, has also become a little bit cliche, but I still think it's extremely important to continue to talk about it and keep it on the forefront of everyone's mind, because it's something that we need to work on continually throughout our lives. So what is resilience? So as noted here, it's basically maintaining flexibility and balance in our life as we deal with crisis, trauma, stressful events, circumstances that come our way. It's the ability to adapt to adversity, and some people talk about it as, being able to bounce back. It's feeling effective and capable of handling uncertainties as they're thrown at us. And this is the good news. It's really a set of behaviors, it's type of behaviors and thoughts and actions that can be learned and developed. So what it's not is a characteristic or personality trait. Now, of course, some people are just genetically and just characteristically more resilient, just as than their constitution. But it's not like you were born with it or you're not born with it. It's something that you can completely develop over time throughout your life. So I like to think about it like a muscle. You have to dedicate time and energy into developing it and keeping it conditioned. So when we have to flex it, we're like ready to do it, right? We're ready and able. Here's an analogy. Think about when you're riding a crowded bus or maybe a train or a subway, and there's no place to sit and you have to stand kind of in the middle, right, of the aisle. In order to make sure we're ready for the ride, it's really best if we keep our knees a little bent, engage our thighs, and stabilize our body, stabilize our torso with our core muscles to keep from falling over, right? So if there's a quick stop or turn, we won't fall. So I think this is really similar to the concept of resilience. And now that we've moved from pandemic into what we're calling endemic, an endemic phase, we need not only resilience, but incredible endurance, which is something that can only be achieved if the resilience muscles are really well conditioned. So the question is, what specifically can we do to build our resilience muscles? First, I want to look at a model for resilience, because I think it's always good to help ground us in these things conceptually. So there's a lot of models on resilience out there. I like this one because it's straightforward and it's simple, and it will be aligning with this concept of whole person self-care, which I'll get to in just a bit. So as you can see, resilience is really built from, it's created by all of these different spheres or aspects of our life. So developing meaning in life, a sense of purpose, being able to cultivate and experience positive emotions as much as possible, having good social support, healthy coping, and really taking care of our physical well-being. So these are just some things that can help ground us in developing resilience. Now, there's a heap of exercises and activities out there for building resilience. And I have some links that are in the presentation, but we'll be sending those out in a separate document when Kristen sends the video recording link at the end. So you'll get an extra document with a bunch of links to different websites that have different resources for you. We're going to look at some of them in a bit. But it can feel really overwhelming, right? To think, oh gosh, how do I do this? How do I build this resilience? And it's really hard to know where to start. So when talking about what we can do to build our resilience, especially during adversity, which this has been a long-going time of adversity for everybody, it's not as simple as saying, do these 10 things every day and you'll become more resilient, right? There's not like a specific. There are listicles, right? There's listicles for everything on the internet, but and you will find listicles about what things you can do. But it's really about doing a variety of things with consistency. That's the important part. A variety of things with consistency, and the end result will be greater resiliency. But just like building muscle strength, figuring out what works for you as an individual may require some experimenting. And it's a really dynamic process. So meaning it can basically, it shifts in our life depending on our circumstances and at any given time. I'll give you a silly little example. I'm one of those lucky people who live close by to the office. And back in the day when we were office bees, I used to walk there a few times a week, just kind of put in my jams and bopped along down to work. It only took me like 10-minute walk. It was really nice. But, since the pandemic, and because now I'm permanently remote, instead, that was a loss for me in terms of, because it was physical exercise, it was psychological, building resilience, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But so instead, what I do is I just sort of morphed it and shift it. And at lunchtime, I take neighborhood walks with my pups, which we'll talk about that pets in a little bit too. So I can still hit on several of my whole person self-care domains to continue to condition my resilience muscles. The point is that finding what works for you at different times in your life is completely personal and fluid. So now that I've sort of laid that out, let's move on to a few concrete activities, and these are just suggestions to help build resilience in a couple of these domains. Okay, so the first one here I have is cultivating positive emotions. What the heck is that, right? How does someone do that? The way we do that is by changing the narrative. So when I was in social work school, when I was getting my master's degree, at that time they really drilled into our heads this concept that the word for crisis in Chinese is made up of two characters, danger and opportunity. I later found out that this is linguistically inaccurate, but conceptually, it's not. It makes complete sense. I mean, that's why we have sayings in English like, with every good, there's a bad. I'm sorry, with every bad, that's the wrong way. With every bad, there's a good. With every cloud, every dark cloud has a silver lining. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? So it's that balance, right? There's two sides to everything. So this first suggested activity really helps us change the narrative from, the glass is half empty to the glass is half full. So changing our perspective. It's basically a journaling exercise you can do for whatever time you want to allot. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, whatever works. I suggest doing it in the morning. I honestly, just personally, I do it when I sit with my coffee, 5 minutes every day when I first get up, my little routine. And I do this myself on a regular basis. You start by basically doing what I call it downloading what you're thinking or feeling onto paper. If you don't have time for this or it sounds completely too much, you can just write down the feeling words themselves that you might be experiencing in that moment, like angry, scared, sad, frustrated, whatever you're feeling in general. It could be positive things as well, but we're talking about changing the narrative. So I'm going to focus on those ones that I just mentioned. So you jot those down and follow it with, and this is the most important part, 2 to 3 positive things. For example, what's happening in your life that's good? What opportunities has the pandemic created for you? What brings you joy? What makes you happy? This is a common one. What are you grateful for? Right? You hear that a lot. What are you grateful for in that moment, in this day, in this moment of your life? So journaling like this both acknowledges our emotional experience. So we're not like putting it aside, saying, negating it. When we're acknowledging it, we're owning it. But it also begins to rewire by flipping the narrative. It begins to rewire our thought patterns, and it actually helps to rewire the neural pathways in our brain. And studies have shown that people who engage in this kind of therapeutic writing exercise on a regular basis have an increased sense of well-being and happiness months and months and months later. Okay, number 2, meaning in life. This one's even a little bit more difficult. So Dan Buettner, who I don't know if you've heard of him, maybe you've heard of blue zones. He's the guy who did the study that came up with the blue zones. And if you don't know what those are, I encourage you to look it up. It's about longevity, really, health and long-term health and well-being and longevity. So he did this research around the world and found that one of several reasons that women in Okinawa, Japan, have such a long lifespan is because they have a strong sense of purpose. Apparently, Okinawans are known for pursuing something called, and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but ikigai, which is a concept that basically means reason for being or reason for waking up in the morning. So for a lot of us, you know, if we were lucky enough to have a sense of purpose pre-pandemic, we may have lost touch with it, or there might be other things in our life. You know, just life itself, right? Family, you know, all the stresses, all of the things we have to juggle may have, you know, gotten us out of touch with having, you know, whatever sense of purpose, if we were lucky enough to have figured that out. For others, maybe we didn't have a sense of purpose or even know that we needed one. But we might be feeling empty and may really be in need of something to give our lives meaning. And I embedded a worksheet here, which is found on the internet, which I will put it in a document, you know, in that document at the end. But what it is it gives, it's kind of a fun little, it's a super practical and easy way to play with this concept of sense of purpose, and, you know, kind of explore it a little bit, you know, on a personal level. So helping to develop it and think about it, get your mind going in, you know, in that direction. The other thing I have listed here is really engaging in acts of kindness. It could really, that helps give you meaning in life. It could be something random, like I like to do this, putting back an extra shopping cart when you're in a parking lot. If there's, like, you know, shopping carts all over the place, just putting back an extra one. Or something more structured, like volunteering. Another personal example, in 2020, I started volunteering for Meals on Wheels, delivering meals to people who were homebound. We're all homebound, but I mean, you know, elderly and disabled and people whose health was compromised, really compromised. And that was really helpful for me to sort of reconnect to, you know, a sense of purpose for myself and this bigger sense of, you know, something that I believe in, which is that giving is receiving. So that really helped me stay connected to something that's important to me in life. Okay, third thing here is social support. So before the pandemic, there was actually a quiet, what we call a quiet epidemic happening all around us, loneliness. There was a survey conducted in 2019 of 20,000 adults. It's a big survey, right? Using the UCLA loneliness scale, which is like a standard in psychology research. And nearly half of the people surveyed, like 46%, noted feeling lonely some or all of the time. And now I'm sure it's a lot higher. And there's a lot of evidence which links social isolation and loneliness to mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, and substance use, as well as several physical health conditions like high blood pressure, coronary heart disease. And, you know, research, when I looked into this, it's really kind of fascinating about the impact of loneliness. And research has shown that the health impact of loneliness is greater than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and that loneliness increases the risk of death by up to 30%. I mean, that was striking to me. So hopefully you all are hip to this kind of concept already, but you know, the mental health impact, mental health and physical health are completely intertwined. In fact, sometimes it becomes a chicken or the egg scenario, like which came first, the mental health challenge or the physical health challenge. So reducing loneliness and increasing our social support is really preventative medicine on all of our fronts. And really, it's the most reliable path to emotional wellness is through relationships. And even for introverts, human connection is not optional, it's really required. Humans are really social animals, and we really need it to survive. And now, there's incredible convenience and there's a lot of, convenience to texting and commenting on posts and DMing folks or whatnot. But they really limit true personal connection, and they don't really alleviate our sense of isolation or loneliness at the end of the day. So here's a simple suggestion. If you're even thinking about someone in your life, do they cross your mind for some reason? And I do this a lot, and it's really creates this wonderful bond and connection and reconnection with people. So if you even think about them, take a moment and just pick up the phone real quick. It's like a happy surprise for people, right? So the happy surprise of a random phone call or video call can leave both you as the caller and the receiver feeling completely connected. In the alternative, and I also do this at least a couple times a month. So everything I'm telling you, I practice what I preach, and there's evidence behind all of these things. So it's not just, Allison's guide to life. These are all things that actually have shown to be, really helpful to people's well-being. But at least a couple times a month, I call it a play date, like a play date with a friend. I get together with a friend. Obviously depends on what's going on, and people's lives are busy, but I try to do something a couple times a month with somebody in person now that we're able to do things in person. Now, if you're someone who you don't have a lot of social outlets or connections, and you're looking for ways to meet new people with common interests, you can think about joining a group, for example, either online or better yet now, again, wonderfully in person. There's things like meetup.com. I don't know if people have heard of that, but they have a lot of interesting finds in there. There's like book clubs, mom clubs, lifestyle groups, political action groups. Those are just a couple of examples. I actually just got my dad connected to some political discussion groups through Meetup because he's very interested in politics. And for those of you who heard us chit-chatting beforehand, I try to stay away from the news quite a bit since the pandemic. If I find it very stressful, for me, I get overloaded quite easily. So I don't really want to talk to him about politics. So I'm like, Dad, if you want to talk to somebody about politics, here, join this Meetup, group. So he started doing it online, and I think now they might actually be meeting in person in his area. So, which is great because he's elderly and he lives alone, and it's helping him with a new kind of outlet for himself. So those are just a couple examples. So not specifically listed on the resilience model I showed, but mindful meditation would fall into several of the spheres I have noted a few slides back. Like coping and positive emotions, which we just talked about. Luckily, the concept of mindfulness is really everywhere right now. So I thought I'd just take a few minutes to talk about it because it's such a powerful practice. So mindfulness is really about being fully present and engaged in whatever we're doing at that moment. This whole idea of like, be here now, be in the moment. And in that, trying to be aware of what's going on with our thoughts and our feelings, but not getting caught up in them, right? So just being as present as possible with what's going on. Meditation is really it's an activity, right? The formal practice of finding inner peace and calm and reducing mental chatter. So mindful meditation is really moment-to-moment awareness that we gain, bringing us into the present through the activity of meditation. So mindfulness is really based off of an old, an ancient Buddhist practice, Vipassana, and has loads of research to validate its benefits. And, I think people use mindfulness and meditation interchangeably. So that's why I kind of wanted to outline them a little bit here. So mindfulness is really a psychological state of awareness, and meditation is only one of the many ways to practice or tap into mindfulness. For example, it's not only about meditation. You can do, once you learn mindfulness kind of techniques, you can do mindful housework, believe it or not. Sweeping is actually very meditative, and you can be very mindful when you're sweeping. Mindful eating, mindful movement, like make mindful walking, or there's more structured practices of mindful movement like Tai Chi, or my favorite, yoga, which there's so many benefits to that holistic mind, mind, body, spirit practice. It really needs its own presentation, but luckily these things are becoming part of our common vernacular, right? So they're not becoming so foreign and strange to people, and they are so powerful. But mindful meditation is not about shutting the brain down. It's more about what I call mono versus multitasking in your head. It's really about acknowledging the mind as it's working, like where it's going, what it's doing, but non-judgmentally, and consciously refocusing our attention on the present moment by paying attention to our breath and to our senses, which really helps root and ground us in the present. And, mindfulness and mindful meditation can tangibly reduce your stress. Meaning you can feel it at work when you're engaging in it, and you do it on a regular basis. And it's an evidence-based practice, which, as mentioned before, has shown through heaps of studies the many ways it's good for your mental and physical health. I'm just going to give you a couple of tasters from the research here. Like, with regular practice, it reduces stress and emotional reactivity. It improves our ability for self-reflection and insight. It improves memory, focus, cognitive flexibility, processing speed. It actually slows down cognitive decline, even for those who are suffering from Alzheimer's. It creates an improved overall sense of well-being. It lowers our blood pressure, reduces the risk for heart disease. It improves our immune system functioning, reduces cell aging. The list goes on and on and on and on about the benefits of it. So really, it's preventative medicine, and I obviously highly, highly recommend it. And listen, I'm gonna get on my soapbox just a little bit more, and then I'll step off of it. It only takes 5 or 10 minutes a day on a consistent basis to reap the benefits. And if we have enough time to check our social media, we have enough time to use a meditation app. And I have some listed at the end here for you, because there's a lot of them. Okay, moving right on. So most of us probably don't realize that engaging in self-care is really the same thing as building resilience. Although the concept of self-care is like theoretically a simple thing, it's something a lot of us often overlook until we're just completely depleted and flat out, right? So what is it? Self-care are specific, deliberate, conscious activities that we engage in to take care of ourselves. And why do we need it? As I mentioned, it's a key to building resilience and creating a balanced life. It helps reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. It's really required to avoid burnout or compassion fatigue for those of us who are, frontline workers or working, directly with people. And it's really needed daily, especially right now. We're going to talk about this a little more because a lot of people look at self-care with a lot of different, lenses. So just like resilience, there's a lot of different models to conceptualize self-care. The model I'm presenting here is what I call whole person self-care. So biopsychosocial, that's what we call it. Biopsychosocial, spiritual. So biological, psychological, social, and spiritual domains. And the idea is to try to develop practices as much as possible to attend to each domain as equally as we can to create balance in our life. And we'll touch on a couple of the domains in a minute, but I want to quickly talk about spiritual, which relates to meaning in life, which we talked about before. A true discussion, obviously, about spirituality is outside the scope of this presentation, but I just want to make a plug for it because religion and spirituality are not necessarily one and the same. You can be religious and not very spiritual, or you can be spiritual and not religious, or you can be completely both. I mean, they don't have to be, they aren't necessarily one and the same. So if you have a spiritual practice, whether it's connected to a religious practice or not, it's important to attend to that part of ourselves, especially now. You know, spirituality helps bring a sense of perspective and meaning and purpose to our lives. So if you don't have a spiritual practice, it might be a good time to think about what the concept of spirituality means to you, because really big existential questions like, why is this happening? Or what is my purpose in life? They really start to come up during times of crisis. And I know for a lot of people, you know, the pandemic has thrown people into a complete, you know, spin relative to this area of their life, right? So it's a good thing to try to spend a little time thinking about. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we build daily self-care practices? First and foremost, we have to have a daily life routine. It's completely our foundation in life. Having a daily rhythm grounds us and helps create a sense of normalcy and structure. And self-care can be and needs to be built into that routine. But before we look at this any further, we're going to go through these a little bit. When I gave this presentation, you know, during lockdown, in 2020, someone said, God, this just seems like so much. It seems like a lot. What if all I can do is nothing? And we all feel like that sometimes. That's completely normal, right? And so when we do feel that way, we need to listen to ourselves. That's self-care, listening to ourselves. And sometimes doing nothing is exactly what we need. You know, laying on the couch and binging on Netflix may be exactly what we need at certain times in our life or during our day. And actually, unknowingly, it happens to hit on both the biological and psychological domains of self-care if you do things like that. And if you add in watching with a friend or a family member, you're actually tapping into another domain, which is the social domain. But remember, this is about balance. And if we find ourselves unable to activate it all, we can't get off the couch, we can't get out of bed, that's when we know something is wrong. And we'll talk about that as well in a couple minutes. So let's look at a couple of these. So biological. So the idea is really just reframing these things. So we have the classic concepts that most people know about, like, you know, make sure you get regular preventative medical care, have a healthy diet, exercise, you know, sleep, you know, enough hours a night. So those are the classic concepts. So how do you sort of break these down and I call it reframing, right? So reframing them into daily doable practices. You don't take vitamins, start taking multivitamins. That's self-care. Grab a healthy snack, you know, rather than a sweet snack, like an apple rather than a cookie or something, right? People actually set timers and do exercise throughout the day as breaks, or take walks like I do, right? Turning off your phone and not ingesting any media, like 30 minutes to an hour before bed. So those are just some examples of way to make it doable. Now they're moving on to the next one, psychological. So like I spoke about, mindful meditation. People talk about that as a classic concept. Spending time in nature, which has proven health benefits as well. Engaging in your hobbies, hanging out with your pets, you know, using positive self-affirmations, journaling. These are all things that are more classic concepts. So how do you break them down? Like I mentioned before, you can use a meditation app for, you know, a little bit every day. You can just close your eyes at any any given interval and take 5 deep, profound breaths on a regular basis. Going outside and looking at the sun for a few minutes, watching the sky, looking at the clouds passing. It doesn't take a lot of time, right? Stopping and petting your pet who may be at your feet. I've got 2 next to me right now, so sometimes I'll just look over and they're so cute. I just take some time and just give them some love. Or writing down inspirational quotes and posting them in your daily view. I love that one. I regularly change out some of the ones that I have posted. Right now, I have 2 that are on my screen, or on my monitors. One of them says, honesty, vulnerability, and sensitivity are my superpowers. I just try to remember that. And that helps remind me, right? Or the newest one I put up is, breath equals invisible medicine. So I had heard that recently. I'm like, wow, that's really true. I can take medicine all the time just by, breathing deeply and focusing on my breath to help care for myself. Okay, spending time with family and friends, that's the social domain, right? So I mentioned this before, just make a little time each day or week to connect with loved ones on phone or in person, better yet. And this is a big one, a balanced use of social media. There's always sometimes there's too much, too much of stuff, right? So using social media in a really balanced way and not having it replace other, social interactions. And then spiritual, classically, it's basically keeping your spiritual practice or developing a personal practice if you don't have one. Ways to reframe this would be, setting an intention for the day each morning, practicing gratitude, and giving thanks before eating, just taking a moment and taking a breath before you start to eat. And also, this kind of crosses over into the psychological self-care because, being in nature can be a very spiritual practice for people as well, as an example. So, some of these practices come really easily and naturally, and others take some cultivating. And I think all of us said this and are guilty of telling ourselves, I just don't have the time, right? Because our days are oftentimes so jam-packed with stuff. So I guess what I'm proposing here is that it doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of time. The idea is just redefining and reframing what self-care is and beginning to practice these little few things daily. Then it can feel like a really manageable thing, a manageable practice and habit. Okay, oops, I clicked on the next one quicker than I meant to. Okay, so back to the doing nothing example. Knowing when we've reached the tipping point is super important. And having what I call a self-care safety plan is a really good idea. Think of it like emergency preparedness, like a fire escape map in an office or an office building, or like an earthquake kit you might have at home. You want to always keep that updated. So biologically, this is just stuff to look out for yourself, right? And all of these, in the mental health or behavioral health world, we kind of look at these at frequency, severity, duration, right? So here I'm talking about duration. So if something's lasting more than 2 weeks. So if for more than 2 weeks, you've found that you've had significant changes in your sleeping or eating patterns or trouble concentrating, having some health issues like headaches or stomach aches, those are pretty classic potential signs. Really what you'd want to do is consult with your doctor. That's where you would start, is by consulting with your doctor. So psychologically, again, if more than 2 weeks, if you have any of these things listed above in biological, or, and maybe you have increased use of substances, if you find yourself worrying a lot, excessive worry or sadness, being really extra irritable or on edge, avoiding activities that you used to enjoy, that's when you really want to think about reaching out for behavioral health support. It's okay to not be okay, right? Social. So if we find ourselves, withdrawing emotionally, or avoiding contact with loved ones, or isolating, self-isolating, again, for a few weeks at a time, you know, for more than a few weeks. Because we all get the blues sometimes, and we all kind of have ebbs and flows, right? But if it's enduring and profound enough to really impact us on, you know, our functioning, our normal functioning, again, that's when you would want to reach out for behavioral health support. And then spiritually, if you find yourself losing hope or faith, questioning your belief system, or feeling like completely no purpose, well, it's loss of purpose, right? There's a lot of wonderful books and literature, self-help books and literature out there. You know, you can consult with a spiritual or religious advisor if you have one, or maybe get involved with, if you don't have a practice or spiritual community, contacting others if you do, to reconnect with people. So there's a lot of things we can do to help ourselves. We don't always need to run right straight to behavioral health. That's always something that is there for us as well, but there's a lot of stuff we can do on our own to help take care of ourselves. I just want to list a couple of additional things here, because this presentation is geared towards adults, but I want to list just a couple symptoms and signs that you might see in your younger children, especially. So developmental regression, like, you know, if a kid has been toilet trained, if your child is now having toileting accidents or bedwetting, that might be a sign that they might need some help. If they're excessively, you know, crying a lot, more than usual, or really clingy, okay, that could be a sign. If they're really irritable, this comes more with the teens a lot, you know, really irritable or acting out or engaging in what we call negative attention-seeking behavior, like getting into bad stuff, and they didn't do that before. That might be a sign, obviously, that they might need help as well. Poor school performance or avoiding school when that used to not be an issue, difficulty paying attention or concentrating, or having what I call phantom headaches or stomach aches, like not wanting to go to school or feeling physically sick quite a bit. Those are, you know, what we call psychosomatics as symptoms. And, you know, psychosomatic symptoms are not, doesn't mean we're making them up. They're actual symptoms where we're actually feeling that in our body, because that's how the mental health, our psychological and emotional health is presenting itself, you know, in our physical health and well-being. So they're actual real, you know, people always think when I say psychosomatic that it means they're making it up. They're not being made up. It just means that it's manifesting itself in this kind of physical, biological way. So that is actually the formal part of my presentation. I'm going to run through a couple of resource slides. And then, Kristen, I don't know if you wanted to, if there's stuff in the chat, if there's questions, we can go over those, and then we can finish up with your last couple of slides. So real quickly, just here's a couple of things. This is an example of a SelfCare self-evaluation tool, and this one there's a bunch of them out there. I like this one. It has, obviously, as you can see, some expanded domains, more than that biopsychosocial spiritual. It's got more than this. And you can find this, I can send this, or you guys can find this easily online. There's a bunch of different ones. And basically you rate yourself, and if you rate yourself anything less than a 3, then that's something that you probably need to pay some attention to. And it has this little, examples of things you can do. And then you can also jot down things on your, own that work for you for self-care. My Strengths, that's something that we offer at HealthNet. It's also, for members, also available to the community, so you don't have to be a HealthNet member. It's an interactive web and app-based wellness tool, which really, it provides inspiration and cultivates resilience and strengthens skills to support mental health. And it's really from this mind, body, spirit perspective. It's a wonderful tool. And they're constantly adding new topics, which is great. And they're always really relevant and of the moment. My current new favorite is Improve the Moment. which gives some simple ways to do what we talked about before, which is basically to, how do you change your mood? How do you cultivate positive emotions? So, and here's information about how to sign up for My Strength, and then the access code if you're a HealthNet member, or for those who might not be HealthNet members, just for what we call the community at large. And then here's a bunch of mindfulness and meditation apps, and these are not listed in any order of importance. All of them are good, have different things to offer. I suggest if you're interested, download a few and see which one fits for you. And I know people don't like to do that because then you get, you have to give your email address and then you get emails, but it's really easy just to unsubscribe if it's one that you don't necessarily want to continue with. But even though I said it's not listed in order of importance, I do like Insight Timer is my favorite. A lot of people like Calm and Headspace. Those are popular ones, but again, they all offer something different. And then I've listed some things here, some other resources. UCLA has the Mindful Awareness Research Center. And actually, that's where a lot of the mindfulness, the evidence-based kind of practice of mindfulness, some of the, the research has come out of there. They have podcasts, weekly guided meditation podcasts, different themes, to help for offering new daily practices in your life. So anyway, that's a really great resource. Then there's an online magazine or resource called mindful.org, which has a bunch of information and ideas and articles, which is really great. And then there's this course, which you can do. It's free. It's 40 days. I haven't done it myself, so I don't know how. I'm assuming it's not like multiple hours per day. But it's through Insight Timer, but you don't have to have Insight Timer to do it. You can get it off the internet and just do it directly through the web, by Jack Kornfield and Tara Bach, who are both kind of like heavy hitters in the mindful meditation world. It's called Mindfulness Daily at Work. So those are some ways to kind of get into it. I will send you, as I said before, we will send these links, but I have some articles, some sort of curated contemporary resources about articles and activities about self-care and building resilience. And I just want to do a quick call out for men, because we really need to normalize self-care practice for men. I think women are it's much more part of our conversation and sort of part of our world to talk about this more than men. So I have a couple links here for articles for men, and then for kids, how you can engage with your kids around self-care, because I wish my family had helped me with these things when I was, starting from a young age and built it into my life. It's what a gift to give your kids and teach them the importance of building resilience and self-care. And this is just, I have this at the end of every presentation. It's just a bunch of resources if need be. CalHope is the newest one that I put in here. It was developed during the pandemic, and it has a lot of interesting things on there. So it's free. The free outreach and crisis counseling and support services, and a lot of different information, community networking and support, resources in the community. Anyway, it's a really great resource. And then I have several here that are issue specific, as you can see. So that is the end of my part of this presentation. I am open to any questions or comments that people may have put in. If you want to shoot those my way or read them aloud to me, I'm happy to field a few of those if you like. Go back to you.
Hi, Allison. Yeah, thank you so much. We do have a few questions coming through. One is, will the self-rating sheet be available? Will you be able to send that to me that I can send off to everyone tomorrow?
Sure. I can. What I'll do, yes, I can do. I can, as long as it passes the muster that we talked about in terms of readability, or I can find the link. That's probably better, right? Finding the web link.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
So, okay. And then I will definitely do that.
Okay, thank you. And then also, what suggestions do you have for supporting children when they exhibit any of the behaviors you mentioned as a first line before seeking therapy, especially when they are out of the norm for their personality?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And right now, this is such a focus, right? Because we're going through as a nation what's been named as a child mental health crisis. Kids are really, really struggling. So if your kid is having difficulty, first line of defense is to reflect that and open up dialogue with your child. But I need to say, first and foremost, they need to be regulated, meaning they can't really talk to your kids about anything heavy or explore what they might be experiencing, their thoughts or their feelings, when they're emotionally heightened. So there's this concept that I like to say, which is when emotions are high, cognition is low. So when our emotional center of our brain is just going haywire, and for kids, that is a, that part of their brain is way more developed than the prefrontal cortex, the logical, kind of cognitive, reasonable part of our brain. So I would start by having conversations with them, depending on their age, right? About saying, how are you? What's going on? I've noticed that you're not wanting to go to school lately. What have you been feeling? And there are a lot of articles that if you look online about how to talk to your kids about difficult things that are going on in the world, right? Like this, they run across things because they hear kids talking about stuff, or they see something or they hear something like this, like the most recent, right? Like that shooting in Buffalo, right? So your kids might get exposed to this. So there's a bunch of articles and information out there. It's kind of out of the scope for me to get into completely here, but about how do you talk to your kids about these kind of things, about scary life world things. So lastly, just, because that's a big question, you need to really look at severity, frequency, and duration, right? So is this like a passing thing, or is it happening all the time, right? But if it's a new behavior that's impacting their functioning, whether they're functioning at school or their relationships with their peers or with their relationships with siblings or with you as parents, it is good to probably consult, do some reading about it. But I would say behavioral health, is a good way to go. If you, as I said, frequency, severity, and duration. So I hope that was a little bit helpful because it's kind of a big question.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for answering those questions. And I know we have a few more popping through, but we can go ahead and go through some of the remaining slides, on our
and then answer
additional
questions.
resources for members. Yeah, and then I can just reach out to you afterwards with, the additional questions. But very helpful, and thank you for that information. It's been tough times for children and adults, so all this information is wonderful, and I'm going to send out the recording link and tips tomorrow. And if you feel the need to share these resources with others around you, please do so, because everyone, I think, could use some additional pointers right now. But thank you, Allison, for going through this slide right here on Decision Power Health and Wellness. For our HealthNet members, we have many wonderful wellness programs and resources that are available to you, such as your personal health profile, where you can keep track of medications, your biometric screenings, and so forth. You can complete the Real Age Test, which is basically a health assessment. It takes about 20 minutes to complete, and then you get a snapshot of your health status at the end. And then it will prompt you into some of the programs based on your responses to the health assessment. And then you can find and compare doctors. You can access different wellness programs on weight management, nutrition, smoking cessation, exercise, stress management, and more. So I encourage HealthNet members to visit the portal to access these wonderful resources. Next slide, please. And we do have telephonic lifestyle management health coaches available to our members. So if you need that extra support and goal that you're trying to achieve, they're right there with you to support you along the way. And if you are really comfortable with talking to a health coach, often about any kind of changes, or you just feel the need to do it on your own, they can connect you with the online health coaching programs as well. And then if you'd like to get connected to the nurse advice line, they're ready and available to answer your questions. You can call the number there on your screen at 1-800-893-5597. Next slide, please. And then who doesn't like a good discount? We have healthy discounts for our HealthNet members to weight management programs such as Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, to chiropractic services, eye care, hearing aids, fitness clubs, and more. So those are listed on the portal as well. So please check that out. Next slide, please. And then we also have wonderful health challenges. And what's really nice about the health challenges is they're available to HealthNet members and non-HealthNet members. So there's a few links there on the screen. So for HealthNet members, you can log on to healthnet.sharecare.com. Or for non-HealthNet members, you can visit sharecare.com to access these health challenges. So pretty soon, June is approaching. So we do have our June online health challenge, which is Healthy Plate Challenge. So you're going to challenge yourself to eat 2 healthy meals per day, and it will guide you through the challenge once you join the challenge. It's wonderful. Then there's also where you can track your healthy plate for 21 out of the 30 days. So it's not too lengthy of a program. I think it's just the right amount of length to keep you engaged in the challenge. And it's not too late to join the Healthier You Challenge. This challenge will run until the end of July. And you're just going to basically challenge yourself to achieve a green day 60 out of 90 days. So to earn a green day on the platform, 8 out of the 13 factors, such as like stress, weight, sleep, exercise, and more, must be green. So that's a really fun challenge. So I encourage HealthNet members and non-HealthNet members to check out the health challenges online. Next slide, please. And then I hope you all join us for our June wellness webinar, which is titled Nutrition Tips to Increase Metabolism. That's going to be on June 15th, same time, 12 o'clock to 12:45. And it's going to provide specific nutrition and lifestyle strategies that can promote an active metabolism while helping to overcome barriers to losing excess weight and maintaining a healthy weight. So we're going to have another guest speaker for this presentation. It's going to be wonderful. So I hope you can join us next month. Next slide, please. All right, and I'd like to thank you all for your time today. Now, I know a lot of people are working remotely today, but if you're joined in a conference room with some of your colleagues, if you could just please go ahead and chat me how many employees are in one conference room and then the company you're working for. We're just going to keep track of that. And Allison, especially, I would like to thank you again for your time. I always enjoy your presentations, your style. The tips and resources are so wonderful, and we'd like to thank you for setting this special 1 hour out of your day for us today and prepping for it. So thank you so much, and thank you, everyone. Yeah, I hope you're all doing well, and take care, and I'll send out the recording link and materials tomorrow. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.